Hello, everybody. Today we shall study the lesson A Triumph of Surgery. This story is about a dog called Tricki who was loved by the owner, Mrs. Pumphrey. The wrong lifestyle given to the dog made him obese, fat, and not fit to survive. So, the change in lifestyle and the way the dog was treated makes the whole story. The story is about a dog, Tricki, who is the pet of a rich lady called Mrs. Pumphrey. She loves her dog very much and is unable to refuse him anything he wants. Tricki is fond of cream cakes, chocolates, and anything which was not fit for a dog. So one day, when Mrs. Pumphrey is out with Tricki for a walk, the narrator sees them and stops to talk. While talking to Mrs. Pumphrey, he realizes that she has been overfeeding Tricki and also had been giving him things that he shouldn't have been eating. Soon Tricki got unwell and Mrs. Pumphrey has to call Mrs. Herriot for help. She does not want to send him away, but the only way suggested by the narrator was to hospitalize him for 15 days. Dr. Herriot had pulled up his car when he saw Mrs. Pumphrey with her dog. The dog was very fat. He had blood-red eyes, his tongue lolled out from his jaws, and Mr. Herriot was very surprised to see this dog in this shape. Mrs. Pumphrey called Tricki as listless. He had no energy because he was very fat and he could not do anything extra bit apart from moving himself out. So she gave him extra meals, but his health could not build up. Even the malt, cold liver oil, and the bowl of Horlicks failed to make him sleepy. Mrs. Pumphrey cut down on the sweet things but relented when Tricki started getting weaker. She gave him his favorite cream cakes and chocolates. She gave him food at odd and irregular hours. She gave him only a little walk and no other exercise. The doctor advised Mrs. Pumphrey to cut down Tricki's food right down and to give him more exercise. Mrs. Pumphrey got determined to adhere to the doctor's stern advice. Dr. Herriot watched Tricki's progress but was not satisfied. Soon after he left eating and kept vomiting and panting. The doctor suggested that Tricki should be kept under observation in the hospital. Mrs. Pumphrey started wailing when Dr. Herriot took Tricki to his hospital. Now, this was very difficult for Mrs. Pumphrey because she was very attached to her pet. Everybody in her household, including her maids, were in tears. Tricki could not even wag his tail or kick with his leg. His eyes too had been dull and they lay down motionless on the carpet. The other dogs at the surgery ignored him as an uninterested object. The doctors gave him plenty of water. He became a bit energetic after 2 days. On the third day, he trotted out and enjoyed the company of other dogs. He also started eating properly. So therefore, the diet was the main issue. Tricki was eating things which was not supposed to be eaten for a dog, and even if he had it, he was not doing any exercise. The doctor did not give Tricki any medical treatment. All day he frolicked with other dogs cheerfully. He got out of danger and started behaving like normal dogs. Now, the problem what the doctor found was that Mrs. Pumphrey was over pampering Tricki. He was not behaving like other dogs. He was not moving out. He was not fed the regular food of a dog, but he was on a diet which was not for dogs. He was having chocolates, cakes, biscuits, and all other unnatural things, and he was behaving not in a natural way. So the doctor prescribed him and gave him what an animal must get. Mrs. Pumphrey enquired about Tricki on phone many a times, and she was suffering from the fangs of his separation. Now Mrs. Pumphrey never left her dog alone, so she was a little agitated about Tricki. Ultimately, she was told that Tricki had recovered. She reached the surgery by car to collect him. The doctor brought Tricki in his arms. Tricki jumped into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap and started licking her face. So it's very clear that Tricki did not forget his master, Mrs. Pumphrey. As soon as he met Mrs. Pumphrey, he behaved the way he used to behave, in a very affectionate manner. Tears were shining in her eyes. She thanked the doctor with trembling lips. She was very thankful for what he did for her. In the end, we see that indeed it was a triumph of surgery, a surgery which did not take place, but still it was a victorious moment for all, especially Tricki. He was on a false diet. He was living a life which was not apt for a dog. But just a change of routine, a change of lifestyle made him live once again like a beautiful dog for his master and for everybody. Thank you.